Hi, I'm Lizzie Harper from lizzieharper.co.uk, and today, instead of doing a step-by-step watercolour, I thought we'd have a go at a pencil illustration. So I'm currently working on some illustrations of pears, pear leaves, pear blossom for Cabalva Farm, who are going to be bringing out a rather classy new Perry brand soon, and so this is for the branding and for the labelling of the bottles. So I'm going to be using Stonehenge Aqua watercolour paper, even though I'm going to be working in graphite, and I will also be using pencils of my Pentel P205 0.5mm lead HB and a Try 24 Factis eraser, and that's all we're going to need in order to work on this illustration of pears. So hopefully you'll enjoy the process. For this job I'm going to do a whole variety of vignettes. Vignette means like little picture. So I'm going to do a lot of little pictures of pears and pear blossoms, mostly the blossom because that's what the client wants. So this here is my sheet of thumbnails, along with writing here which shows me where the different reference images I'm working from are. Unfortunately there's not a pear leaf or a pear blossom to be found anywhere. Here are a couple that I've already done. So there's the pear blossom, and over here is a sprig of pear blossom, and I'm about to start working here on a pear fruit with some leaves. What's lovely about this job is it's all in graphite, and I love working in pencil. So the equipment I'm going to be using is my pencil, which is a 0.5mm lead Pentel P205. It's a mechanical pencil, which means you can sharpen the lead literally by breaking it against a page. So there's no nonsense about wood shavings or anything like that, or bits of graphite. And I also need to use a good rubber. In this case it's a Factis, which is a very cheap soft eraser. I have drawn pears before, over and over actually. This is a reproduction of a watercolour I did many years ago, and down here is a pen and ink of a pear, but this is specific for this job. So yeah, so I'm going to keep drawing this pear, and I'll explain to you what I'm doing as we go along. I'm plotting in the outward shape of the leaves first. So there's another one that comes down here, so I'm drawing it in very lightly to start with, because they've got slightly serrated edges, pear leaves have. So I don't want to draw it in too hard and then have to go over it and put in all the sharp teeth, especially because the finished thing is going to be a pencil drawing, not a watercolour. So there's no opportunity to erase my graphite lines. Okay. I don't want to make a big thing about these serrations, because they're not that obvious. But they are present, so literally just by slightly breaking the stroke of the pencil you can suggest that the edges are not entirely smooth. Always when drawing leaves, a big thing to look for is the position of the midrib or the main vein. It gives the entire leaf a structure, so I always plot that in, even early stages. Okay, so that leaf goes there. So although I am working from ref, I'm also thinking about the composition, what will work, what won't work. Okay, I've got another leaf there. There is one that comes up like this, but I'm going to make it longer than it actually is in the reference, because I think that will be more elegant. Eleganza. Coming up like that, and it's folded over, so I want to show that, the underside of the leaf. And in here it abuts the twig, so that's all right. Okay, so then I'm going to sharpen the pencil. You know, I just said you could sharpen the pencil by breaking the lead. Literally, you go like this. I'm going to do it off the edge of the page. There, nice sharp lead. So let's plot that one in. Where's it gone? There it is. So again, a slight serration. Oh, crikey. Up here, just out of view, is another of the illustrations, a completed one. And I just realised I was leaning my hand on it. Can't do that. That's not a good idea because you could smudge the graphite. So when you're working with graphite, you've got to be aware of stuff like that. Make sure you're not leaning on any completed parts of a drawing because they will smudge. Okay, this is the other side of the leaf. Tiny teeth. It's weird actually, depending on the variety of pear, you have different serrations, different levels of serration on the leaf. Okay, so that does that. Got another leaf. How far up's that illustration? Okay, I've got room to do this. So there's another leaf that comes up and out. I'm going to keep checking on the focus. In the past, I've had issues with the film focusing on my hand, which is not a thing of beauty, instead of the drawing, which may also not be a thing of beauty, but there we are. Okay, so plotting it in. That's the stalk. And that comes like that. Okay, and I need to make that a confident line. That's fine. And comes round the corner. Oh no, I messed that up, didn't I? Okay. So it comes around the corner like that. It's quite a sharp angle, but it's not as sharp as I drew it to start with. Okay, and this comes out like that, and then comes down. It comes down below. You can always think when you're drawing leaves, you've got to make sure that you remember they're a flat surface. So, well, they're a folded surface really, but you've got to make sure that the geometry, I guess, makes sense. So if it folds over, you need to make that make sense for you. I'm going to make it a bit longer because I don't like the way the tips of those leaves line up perfectly. That's ugly. That's more like it. Okay, plot that one in, so that's going to be fine. And this switches to here because it comes through onto the other side of the leaf, doesn't it? So literally that midrib does this. More or less. Okay, put in those edges. You can hear the printer churning away in the background. Not sure what it thinks it's doing, but it doesn't matter. It has a mind of its own. All the technology in my studio has a mind of its own. So literally I'm not even putting the teeth in here. I'm just breaking the line a little bit so that you can see it's not entirely smooth. Okay. That's a bit of a rubbish line. Okay. And the teeth here again. I'm going to do that. And round the corner. Okay, that leave's fine. There's another leaf that comes out from there as well, which is more folded. It's actually on a parallel with it, but I don't want it to be on a parallel with because that is compositionally clunky. What's it doing? It comes round and out like this. Okay, and again we've got this bit coming up like this, and then down, all the way down. Oh, that was a bit of a odd line. Okay, and then lovely, that'll do, that'll do. If I continue that curve. A bit big actually. I wonder if I can make it a bit smaller. If I start that a bit earlier, I want that to be done there, but I do want this tip to come out, but just not as far.
Maybe if I just change the angle. Yep, that'll do it. Okay, and I'll put the details into that now. Serrations. So start by, crikey, putting in the shapes, basic shapes. And then once you've done that, which is what I'm doing now, then we'll work into the detail a little more. And because these have got to be sketchbook illustrations or sort of unpolished, well, it's up to me really. It's a lovely job because I've been given a great deal of autonomy. But I want some of them to be kind of half finished. So then it'll be a matter of, once I've finished drawing this up, deciding, that's weird, but deciding what I will do as a finished illustration, what I won't. Okay, so there's another leaf, and actually it does kind of echo that, but if I do that, those two in parallel, that's going to look nasty compositionally. So I'm going to straighten this line more than it is in the reference I'm working from, and lower the leaf a little so that the space between these two leaves coming out sideways is more elegant. And you've got to think about these things as you draw, how you want, oh, that's rubbish, how you want it to look on the page. What to leave in and what to include. Okay, that one. There is another one that comes here. Do I want that in there or not? I'll tell you what, I want this one. That's quite nice, that angle. And that one can come out at a sharper angle and emerge from behind there. Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? Okay. Okay. That does that. This one does this. Whoa! No, it doesn't. It comes much sharper in than that. Okay. That's more or less okay because the stick's coming in here. Okay. So let's put some detailing into this. Not quite sure how to do this film because the thing is a pencil drawing can take as long as, if not longer than, a watercolour, and any of you who've stuck with me before will know that what I'm not good at is doing sharp, concise films. My films tend to take forever. They're very rarely slick and they're quite frequently rather boring. Anyway, I'll do my best. I'll just film bits and pieces and then we'll see. So this leaf comes out like this. And there's a little tip, mercanate, I think is the right botanical term. It means a sharp tip. The paper I'm working on is actually watercolour paper, so I'm using Stonehenge Aqua. And the reason why is because the paper is quite white, which I like for pencil work, and also because I've worked on it in pencil before and I know that it takes pencil really prettily. So you don't just have to stick to what you feel is a, you know, a watercolour page you can only work in watercolour on. This is annoying. I feel like there should be another leaf here, but I need to be a bit careful. That one we've got. I mean, there is another one. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna add the tree, the stick here. So that comes down there. It attaches to a larger part of the tree just there. And the little twigs are quite kind of, by the look of it, at least, they're quite sort of ridged and rough. So we're going to draw that in, looking at the reference and thinking about composition. Making sure we're still focused on the drawing. And remember, so these are markings and ridges that come from the tree having grown. and they're not flat patterns, so they go round the twig. So as you draw, remember that you're going to encompass, there must be a word which means go, well, circumnavigate. That's not what I mean, because that's only over the world that you circumnavigate, isn't it? Right, anyway, I'm going to stop wittering on and put in this side twig, which comes off from the main one here. Actually, it doesn't do very much once it comes off there, but it is there. And whoop, up we go. That's got a slight notch on it. I'm exaggerating that bit there because it should be more obvious, because that's where the side twig comes off. Now the main twig, it's quite a sharp angle actually, it's rather elegant. Comes up here. And the wood on this is rather different than the wood on the side twig. It seems a little smoother actually. And I'm letting that line just sort of die a death. Oh, that's a nasty bit of drawing, sorry. So I'm letting it fade out because I don't want to get involved in drawing every single bit of it. I want it to come in and hold the tree, you know, hold that bit that I'm drawing, and then it can go off being a twig elsewhere. Let's get a bit more detail in there. Oops, that probably needs to do that. And just fade that line out. Okay. Now then, and can you see all these sheets here? They're so that as I move my hand I don't blur the drawing. Actually, it might be a bit prettier if I had the courage to bring it behind the leaf. There we are, yes, that's more elegant. Okay, now I'm going to plot in the pear. Actually, I'm going to put in the ventral, that's not even a word, Lizzie, the central rib here. Because I seem to have stopped doing that. I'm not sure what I did there. So let's put in that main vein. Up. Now, so this bit here continues along here, it ends in that leaf, but from it we have here coming down quite a long stalk. And there's the fruit. So how big is the fruit? Checking my reference, so checking my photo, that fruit, it's bigger than, it comes above there, so it needs to come at least down to there, which is off the page, isn't it? Hang on. There, now we're back on the page. Okay, so plotting in the shape of that fruit. It's quite a strange elongate pear shape this is. I'm not sure what variety it is. This is it's not a domestic pear, it's a pear used to make perry, which makes sense since this is an illustration destined. I'm doing this side very slowly because another pear overlaps it, so I don't want to put any lines out to be erased. These illustrations are destined for a perry label, as I said. So the variety of pear illustrated needs to be one that can be used to make perry. I think they're much sourer than the common eating pear. A bit lumpy at the bottom, this is really, but That's all right, I'm quite happy about that. I'm not happy about that bit just there though. Okay. Then another one comes out from here. And again, swells a little. That's not a nice curve. It can be quite difficult drawing curves, right? And it's on an angle like that, so the base of it will be here. And the top of it is going to show that, we've got the top of it coming out like this. And anchoring it down here. Oh, that was a bit of a wobbly line, wasn't it? Be so much easier if these things were actually in season. I always think that. It's always possible to work from image reference, photo reference, but it does make life an awful lot easier if you have the actual thing in front of you. I haven't quite decided what to do about that yet. So once I've drawn these in, which is only going to take a second or two now probably, the edges of this leaf, and that's really the serrations, they're very minimal. So now I'm going to pause for a second and decide what to do with each part of the drawing. So I've had a little look at the composition here, I've drawn it out, and all of these bits, 1, 2, 3, and the pears are going to be in detail, and these are just going to be line drawings. So let's do the line drawings first, so that's the easy bit. Got the side veins coming off like this, and they're parallel, but they're not totally parallel. There's variety going on there. Every leaf is an individual, every pear tree is an individual within the species, and every leaf is an individual entity on the same tree. So yes, look for patterns, but don't just assume everything looks the same, because it does not. You'll be caught out by that. It will look artificial. Okay, and the veins are not exactly opposite. They're not alternate, but they're not opposite. Okay, and coming up underneath, oh, it's quite hard to see. And again, to show that they're veins coming up underneath rather than on the leaf blade itself, I do a double line. But again, keeping it really light. Okay, this one here is folded up on itself. Okay, and then these are going the same direction. These are the under veins on the side that we can see here. I'm going to keep focusing in there. Those are too thick. They're not a lot too thick, that's fine. Okay. That's not nice. If I'm leaving that as a line drawing, that corner has to be more elegant. It cannot be allowed to be so scrappy. There, that's better. This one also. The reference here is much clearer. So, and as we come closer to the midrib, I press a little harder. Oh, that's nice. Look, that vein there, we can really see what's going on. You see it bifurcates in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And that one changes angle slightly. Oops. It's all about observation. And sure, yeah, it'd be much easier if I actually had the leaf there, but you can still get quite a lot from a photo. An awful lot more than just from making it up, right? Some slight And this one comes like that and like that, which is a good thing because it covers one of the pencil lines that I've erased. That comes out like that and gets joined to like that. So when you're drawing veins, this folds up. When you're drawing veins, remember what the purpose of a leaf vein is, right? So you've got this big flat area with pigment, chlorophyll, all this kind of stuff, working to utilize the sun to make energy for the entire plant. And what you need to remember is that every part of it needs to be served. It needs to be, yeah, so every part of this leaf blade has to be given enough water and minerals and stuff sucked up by the roots from the soil to maintain it and to maintain the structure. As you all know, a plant, if it doesn't get enough water, it withers, and that's not going to work. Oof. So these veins, they need to work their way through the whole plant to make sure that every single cell gets served with the nutrients and the water it requires, and likewise so that every little bit of energy made by the process of photosynthesis in the leaves, that's wrong. So that every bit of energy made by the process of photosynthesis can be shared with the whole of the plant. Okay, that's better. There's quite a little, so it is a network. It's a network reaching everywhere. And of course, when you draw, you have to decide how far you're going to go. How deep into the madness of the venation are you going to go? And that is something I get wrong. I quite often go too far, so I find myself getting really lost in amongst the byways and the highways of the veins. Can you see it? I'm making almost, I mean, the lines are there, but I am using very, very little pressure to show them. Less is more with pencil. And with pencil, if you can, again, I hate to be prescriptive, but if you can, the way I use pencil is I think it's very beautiful if you can have the courage of your convictions and make one mark. Leaf is going to have tone on it. So as before, I'm going to plot in the veins because they're going to help me with this. See how there you go. They're going to give me a structure to hang the lights and darks onto. And all the way up. Right. And these are harder to see on this side, but they're there. Okay. Now then, I'm going to half shut my eyes when I look at my reference and figure out, so the reference we're looking at now is this leaf. So can you see there's a dark area here, and there's a dark area here, and there's a dark area here, and it's slightly darker on this side, on the downward side. No, that's misleading, because look, here it's darker on the upward side. So I'm going to stick with that because that's clearer as my guidance. So I'm using just lots of little pencil marks here. It's building up the tonality. Feeling a little bit thick. This is always a scary bit. Don't want to overdo it, but at the same time you don't want to be weak and wispy. making sure those pencil lines follow the line of growth, so they follow the growth pattern of the leaf. Again, starting by anchoring that pencil line under the vein. Softening it off. Hoping, yeah, this is still, oops, it is still in focus. That's less because there's a slight shininess to the leaf, so I've got to be careful that we respect that and don't go skidding into that too much, compromising it. There's a bit of dark there as well. There we go. Whoop. So I'm really interested in what the client has in mind for this. So they make their own perry. Now perry is a traditional English British drink. It's like alcohol. It's a bit like cider, but it's made with apples. No, it's not. Silly girl. It's made with pears, not with apples. And therefore, in the same way as you can get really classy artisan cider nowadays. In the old days, not the cider you got used to be pretty disgusting, kind of like moonshine made in a dirty barrel at the bottom of somebody's garden. I have a friend whose cider to this day is legendary and absolutely vile. But what this company are doing, or what they're thinking of doing, which I think is a great idea, is making this a much classier drink. So instead of it being this sort of, farming tipple, they realised that by using the correct yeasts and by preparing it in a specific way, you can make a really classy drink. Now, I'm not just saying that, because they did give me a bottle of it to try, and it was delicious. It was kind of like a light, crisp rosé, not to be sneered at. Okay. So the branding and the imagery, they want that to be light and crisp and classy. Their target market is kind of people who would like to go out for a glass of Prosecco, but they now could be able to go out for a classy shared bottle or shared glass of perry, really classy perry. I think it's a lovely idea. So these illustrations have to be quite classy too, you see. And I love the idea of them being in graphite. I think that is quite posh. It's a shame with doing this video I'm not going to be able to show you the finished labelled product, because it won't happen for months and months. This is often the way with illustration, is that you'll work on something that you really like, but then the context in which it's being used as, it takes a long time for the designers to tweak and make it just so. So there's a delay. Same with publishing, actually. Okay, and then on this side it's much darker. Again, following that line of growth. Half shutting your eyes as you check that reference, Keep looking at your reference all the time. Now, there's too much variation of tone in there, so I'm going to go over the whole of this side, knock it back with a very light pressure, and because it's so dark here, it needs to be equally dark here, otherwise they look like they're totally different things, like they're not the same leaf. So I'm darkening these bits, and thinning down the midrib, which also needs doing. Okay, darkening up here as well. trying to even that all up, crisp up that line. I might have gone a bit too dark on this leaf, that's annoying, but never mind. Okay, darken this edge, crisp that up. Okay, so again, plotting in those veins. With that middle leaf, this area is dark, that top bit, and this side here. So that's the overall plan. I think this leaf went a little bit too dark, so I'm going to try really hard to make this one a bit less full on. So my darkest darks are here. And less is more, Lizzie. And again, in the same way as that light was a little darker on the top of the veins in that last leaf, there's a consistency here. There we go. It's lighter towards the tip of the leaf, so I've got to respect that. Not get carried away with my darks. Getting the right tonality is really difficult. So obviously, I mean, your basics are the harder you press, the darker the line. And the closer the marks you make are together, the darker it looks. But you've got to be really careful with some of this stuff, because if it's an area where it's really light, you don't want to be playing around with that stuff too much. You just don't want to risk making things too dark. So this is, here there's an area of light. Super careful touch here. Bit darker here where the leaf blade curls back in towards the midrib. Same here. Slightly darker there so you can see what's happening with the different sections of the leaf. And again, echoing the same pattern throughout. Bit darker up here, but not much. And again, yeah, we're almost a flat grey tonally up here. It's a relief. I'm going to leave a little bit of white there to show the shine, because these leaves of this specific sort of peri pear are quite shiny. And again, towards the tip, it's less again. And it comes up, this darkness comes up to the very edge of the leaf. But again, I need to be careful not to overdo it. This bit here is the darkest. And then it gets lighter again. And again, knocking it back with the gentlest of touches just here. Okay, it's very dark just there. That's interesting. It's because the leaf folds up on itself, you see. Always a reason for your lights and your darks. Okay. So there are going to be 10 illustrations on this sheet, and the designers can pick and choose which ones they like and which ones they loathe. And they can use some for the packaging and not if they don't like them. It's always a bit of a risk doing something like that, because you'll get 7 drawings done or 8 drawings done, whatever, and then on the last one you make a massive mistake and the whole thing is trashed and you look like a loser. But that's okay, it doesn't really matter. They can use individual entities and individual bits. I'm going to just put the line there to show what's going on. It's a bit confused down there. Okay. And the other side is much darker, remember? This film is already nearly an hour long. What is it with me and long films? Maybe just what I do takes a long time. Hey, Lizzie? Perhaps that's what's happening. Okay. So darker towards here. And again, I'm leaving a tiny bit of... Oh, come on. I'm leaving a tiny bit of white on the very edge of the leaf margin. Just because the edge of the leaf margin curls up a little bit. So therefore, it doesn't get shaded quite so much. So this side, as I say, is a little darker. But again, I want to keep it quite subtle. What is difficult with photo reference is the nuances amongst the tonality. So if I had the actual leaf here, I would be able to rotate it until we got to a point where the dark and light was in a position that really was visually very pleasing. And of course we miss out on that if we just have a photo, because we only have the one angle, the angle that the picture is taken up. I also need to say at this point in time, do use, if you are working from photos, and if these photos do not belong to you, if they are not photos that you have taken yourself, always ask permission before working from them, because otherwise you might be risking copyright infringement, which you don't want to do. It's basically disrespecting a photographer, just stealing their work. And that's why we tend to use several different sources when you illustrate, partly because it gives a more realistic overview of what you're drawing rather than just sticking to one image. That's weird. Why is that gone like that? And also partly because the art of illustration is partly an art of copying, but there's hopefully a little more going on than just that. Of course, if you talk about your own photos, you can trace the flipping thing and colour it in. It's fine. And indeed I have done in the past, I'm not going to lie. Tracing is great. I have a special machine that does tracing for me. It's called a projector. Put something in it, turn it on, and it projects down onto the table and you can draw around it. And I love it. Now, some people get really uptight and say, oh, it's not pure, it's not real drawing, it's cheating. As I've written blogs about it, and I'm quite passionate about this, but there is, when it comes to drawing, no such thing as cheating. Anything that makes you want to pick up a pencil or a paintbrush and draw is a splendid thing, in my opinion. And with things like camera obscurers and projectors and stuff, you know, the greats used them. People like Dürer put up grids when he drew so that he knew where bits of his model were, and Leonardo used a camera obscura to work with. So I guess if they're happy to use these optical aids, why shouldn't we be? I'm not going to put myself above Leonardo in any way. Not even close. Okay. Tiny bit of anchoring needed here, but again, we're being super subtle. At least trying to be. I know in these films I go quiet at various points. It's normally when I'm concentrating. So apologies for that. Make that line consistent. Consistency. Okay. I'm going to half shut my eyes compared to my reference. This whole bit needs to be darker. So you see, if you use a light enough colour, a light enough shade, you can still see the nuances of the tonality that you've initially put in going on underneath. But in the same way as putting a one colour wash on top of something will unify it, this unifies the shadow. Now I'm going to do a sharp line up here on this side of the leaf. That needs a little help, doesn't it? I'm not sure what's going on down there. I know there's a bit of sharp darkness, but I've made it too sharp. Okay, I'm going to put a bit dark here so this leaf is casting shadow on the leaf behind it. And again, a bit more of this unifying shadow on this area. Okay, that's 2 leaves. Now I'm going to do this one, but I'm going to give you guys a break. I'll come back once I've done it. The leaves are done, and you can see I've put a little bit of tonality in some of the leaves behind, sort of suggesting like I've almost started to work on them but haven't. So now we're going to move on to the pears. And I am a fool because I forgot to write down what variety of peri pear these were, but they're bright red and shiny and very beautiful. Before starting the pears, on my scrap I've done a very rough suggestion of where our lights and darks are. I'm also experimenting because this leaf in the photo that I'm working from, in the reference I'm working from, and logically casts a shadow on that fruit, but I'm not entirely committed to that. I think we may just try and even that out a bit. This is the darkest dark where the 2 pears touch each other. Okay, so again, making sure we have something to lean our hand on. Where will I start? I don't even know. I'm going to start with the darkest darks. So the shadow on these follows the shape of the fruit, obviously. And if we start on the darkest dark, then we can always adjust back to that. That can be like our point of reference. And obviously the lightest light is where the page remains white, just like with watercolour. It's interesting, it's a bit dark around here. Not as dark. Again, half shutting my eyes is very useful here. So building up that tonality with lots of tiny considered pencil strokes. At least I like to say they're tiny and considered. Are they considered, or am I just colouring in? A bit both, maybe. Okay. Blending, blending. We don't want any stark edges. Every mark that we make needs to help suggest the roundness and the shininess of that fruit. So I'm now already, even though we're not even a quarter of the way around the pear, I'm already using such a light touch that I'm barely touching the page with a pencil. So yeah, will these pears look classy enough to appear on a bottle of perry? I do not know, I do not know. Let's hope something I draw on this sheet of paper looks classy. I'm not known for being particularly classy as an individual, so who knows. Okay. And we come in it's darker again down here. Not as dark, but it's darker. Okay. I am still on screen. Following that shadow up. Also be careful if you even pause for a second, be careful that the angle of your pencil doesn't change to such an extent that you get the sharp end of a lead if you've been using the soft end of a lead, because that can change the light and dark. If you suddenly are using a sharp edge, it will be a lot darker than if you're using the edge that's been blunted with use. Up the far side. See, I'm not going all the way at the edge because it seems to be the situation it often is that where the light touches the edge of a fruit, significantly paler. Logic. Oh, we're getting to a point where I need to make my decision about whether or not that leaf is casting a shadow, isn't it? Oh, scary times. Bit darker down here. And up here. Some people like to smudge pencil, so you can get something called a smudge tool, which is like a little twist of tissue paper. Personally, I don't like it. That doesn't mean it's a good or a bad thing. It just means for me it's not a technique that I like to use. But certainly if you're used to using the smudge tool and want to use it when you draw with pencil, go for it. Everything that you do is up to you. And I've certainly seen some beautiful illustrations using the smudge tool. It's just not really for me. Okay. Can't be called a smudge tool, can it? Seems unlikely. This is a bit too stark just there. It's correct. I mean, the tonality is correct, but it's not blended in properly. Up to where the stalk is, and there's a slight paleness area of pale where the stalk is. Luckily for me, this particular pear, this particular type of pear, does not have many striations or stripes or blotches or anything like that, which always makes doing a big tonal area that much easier if you haven't got markings to respect and consider. Being careful here because we're moving into the area of utmost lightness, from the dark side to the light side. And I also have to decide about that leaf, don't I? pull the whole thing together. I put a few blemishes on the pears, just because it makes them look slightly more realistic. There was a bit of eraser, a bit of leftover eraser on the page. So I had to do something to incorporate that, because that's not going to shift anywhere. Not going to put any markings really in the light bit. That's asking for trouble. But a few in the dark bit gives it a certain je ne sais quoi. Half shutting my eyes, definitely the darkest of the dark is right there, which is what we've got. So that's good. I can't really send that any darker, actually. And it's pretty dark down there as well. Whoops. Now I've lost my curve. I'm losing my edge. Okay. Right, and up here I put in the shadow here. I can't not put the shadow in here. I just can't. It looks stupid. So I'm going to drop this in. It might be an error of judgment. Hopefully it won't be. Let's see. What do you reckon? Has she been really stupid, or has she done something wise? Somewhere in between, I think. Okay, I'm going to soften the edges of it. Darken that. That's right. Yeah, it's better there than not there. Okay, so if we zoom out, there we go. That illustration is complete.
Thank you very much for joining me as we drew a pear in pencil today. Here it is on the sheet. There you can see that's what we've done today. There's a blossom above, there's another blossom. By the time I'm done with the job, that whole sheet is going to be absolutely covered in pencil illustrations, and then the designers can choose which ones they want to use for the labelling of the Perry brand and the brand identity. So thank you very much for joining me today. If you'd like to see more of my work, please visit lizzieharper.co.uk, where there are lots of blogs, loads of galleries of my work, and an awful lot of original artwork for sale, which you could always buy if you like. For more of my films, step-by-steps like this, please do like and subscribe. I try and make films in between jobs when I can. And in the meantime, thank you so much for your time and for spending this morning drawing a pear in pencil with me. I'll see you next time. Bye.